Yeah, I mean, it was really just an accident. It was, needing to make more money than I was just working at a restaurant or a Jamba Juice or standing on a street corner. So I had the side business in high school, DJing parties and school dances. And that really gave me the idea of, hey, you can earn more money if you work for yourself. So after my freshman year at Georgetown, my friends and I started a sign spinning company. We called it Arrow Advertising, and we ran it simultaneously in San Diego and Washington D.C. While we finished college. And then after we graduated, we started to expand to other cities, New York, Miami, San Francisco, Las Vegas, to really test it, make sure that it worked everywhere. And we had, great results. We built up a lot of relationships with home builders, major media buyers, and then we were able to franchise the concept and begin offering licensing opportunities in 2008. And so
Oh, so
we're
wow,
now,
6 years
yeah.
after you got started is when you first started franchising.
Right. I mean, that's when we started the process. There's definitely a lot of administrative setup involved. So I think we ended up selling our first franchise in 2009, about 8 months after we began the setup process. But yeah, so it took about 6 to 7 years to go from the first sign we ever spun to selling that first franchise. Well, a lot of people hear franchise and they think McDonald's or Subway, but we actually are trying to be more like the NBA or the NFL,
Hmm.
where each city has a franchise owner and they're a member of a league. And, we compete with each other, but we also cooperate with one another to, ensure best practices. And we don't oversaturate the market with too many franchisees. Our franchisees have large territories and control the majority of the business. So I think for us it was more about just using that logo and the brand name and then having the quality control measures in place where we can make sure that our sign spinners get treated right and that our customers get the quality of service that we're used to delivering. Well, I get to play a couple of different roles. I would say I'm kind of like the commissioner of the league, like a David Stern or Paul Tagliabue, in that, I oversee the operations of the different teams and, can make suggestions to them, help approve spinner trades and, develop marketing relationships that go across our different cities. But then I also do get to help run an advertising business. And I think create solutions for large clients like Sprint or McDonald's. And I get to help work on their videos with our, creative designers and on their marketing material with our graphic designers. So it's different things each day.
Does this get good gas mileage?
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal.
So that was an awesome commercial. I mean, that's awesome. What was I just this is a side step, but what was that like? Like how did that happen?
So yeah, we've got a great team here in Los Angeles, and we get calls all the time from casting companies and
Oh,
production
really?
companies looking to use sign spinners as a concept. And We got this one from the agency that represents Ford and that was doing the creative for them. And they wanted as many sign spinners as we could give them. So we've got about 55 of our spinners in there. And what was great is not only did they get paid the production fee for filming the commercial, but they got residuals every time that it aired. And
Really?
Ford invested a lot of money.
Does that mean we have to pay for showing it now?
Well, no, I mean, I think now it's YouTube and it's viral, it's out in the creative space. But no, when they were airing it during Sports Center and the Masters and the NBA Finals, it was fantastic. I think each of our spinners made somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 for their appearance in that commercial.
Wow,
and all we did was broker the deal. So, I mean, really, again, our philosophy of making the sign spinners the stars really paid off in this instance. So I think technically we've got 25 different franchisees or licensees, depending on the city or country. And, that's been an interesting process. There's definitely a lot of extra regulations in terms of the types of relationships you have with people when you're executing a franchise agreement. And I'm by no means a franchise consultant, so all of this advice comes with a certain grain of salt. But you obviously have to prepare a special franchise disclosure document. That document has to satisfy certain requirements and guidelines set forth by the franchise board here in the United States. And that document has to be approved before you can ever even offer somebody a franchise business opportunity.
So it's kind of like going public. There's papers you have to file.
Absolutely, and including the fact that each year you have to get your financial statements audited by an independent third party, and those certified financial statements have to be included in each year's renewed disclosure document. And those numbers are shared with all of your current franchisees and with any prospective franchise buyers. So the upfront cost with legal fees, consulting fees, filing fees, I would put at around $250,000, so $250,000. And then on an annual basis, because you're looking at doing the same thing with consulting and legal fees of between, and of course the accounting fees, like I mentioned, getting that audit performed is a significant financial commitment on an annual basis. You're not going to find a lot of people that are going to perform a financial audit for under $15,000. So, I mean, if you think getting your taxes done is a pain in the neck, then, I mean, you really don't want to get a certified financial audit every year, because it takes up a large portion of your time as a business owner. And, I mean, it's really your ass on the line, that it's your neck on the line if something goes wrong. So on an annual basis, I would say I spend another 10% of that, $25,000 a year on legal, consulting, and accounting fees. And that's because I've gotten my prices down. You could expect to spend as much as $50,000 a year on that.
Wow. And what percentage? You mentioned you have 25 franchisees and licensees, basically. It sounds like those are maybe locations you started before you started franchising. You just kept those in-house. How does that divide look like in terms of numbers?
We've gone back and forth, and I think that's part of being a franchisor is when people go through their own personal life cycles and when businesses go through life cycles, you can either run it as a corporate location or allow somebody to run it as a franchise. Either way, you have to control that brand and have to ensure those certain consistencies regardless. So we go literally between 0% corporate locations and 50% corporate locations since we started franchising. And I think that those corporate locations are important because they give us a testing ground for new ideas, and they give us a source of new managers. And I think way to do things that provide best practices to some of our franchisees too. I would say to have at least three working models to really demonstrate that it can overcome, I think, different regional challenges, different cultural challenges, and that it's not just successful because of one individual. If you can remove those variables and prove that you really have a system, then you're going to be able to command a higher price. And I think in both the franchise fee and the royalties, because you've got more expertise, you've actually fine-tuned the business more. So if it can run without you in a few independent locations, then you've really got something that I think is at least franchisable, but it's got to have a sustainable competitive advantage. You've got to be able to ward off competitors, and you've got to be able to attract people that want to run this business, and it's got to be profitable for them, not just for you. It can't be something that is making money just because of your unique skill set. It's got to be something that somebody else could pick up and do and also make money. No, I mean, I think that's the other thing. I'm an organic entrepreneur, as I like to refer to myself, and we didn't franchise until we had the money saved up to franchise.
Wow. You didn't take out
And
a loan or anything? You just use
no,
money?
I mean, we've been in business, like you said, for 6, 7 years, and that had been part of our end game for the last 3 or 4 years, since we really started planting all of these development seeds. That's why we went to all those different cities, was so that one day we could, if it was appropriate, franchise. And so we had that capital saved up, and you didn't incur all those costs, simultaneously. Some of that's laid out over the course of 12 months or 24 months as you're becoming a franchise. So, if you can do some budgeting and plan ahead, then you'll be all right. But I think that in general, I don't like to make a business decision until we can finance it internally. And I think Howard Schultz does that with Starbucks, I've read. And I think that that's a great rule of thumb for anything, is just living within your means. And yeah, I believe in, financing a business if you need to get outside capital, don't misunderstand me. But for me, what's worked best is forcing myself to save up the money to make strategic decisions. And then I really make them carefully.
What was that like? It's a lot of money, $250,000 profit that you reinvested back in the company. Granted, it wasn't all at once, but it was kind of probably enough that you could see as a big chunk. Was that hard for you to top down that money? I mean, that could buy a house, could buy a car, or could buy maybe other expenses. You could have started at other new locations off the bat.
Yeah, in hindsight, I think about all the things I could have done with it. But I'm happy to be where we are, and I think that eventually we were going to have to cross that bridge. I'm glad we crossed it when we did,
So you
because
wouldn't have done it sooner or later?
you can always go back and question the timing, and I think that it worked out well because we got it out of the way. I mean, you're going to have to incur those costs if you want to be a franchise. Was the timing optimal? No, because it came at the same time that we lost a large portion of our clients on the advertising side because of the recession, and when our cost base increased because I was pursuing a master's. So there's definitely, it wasn't easy. There was a lot of penny pinching involved. I think the pitfalls with franchising lie in the quality of the product, and that as a founder, you've got so much passion for the business that the likelihood that someone's going to replicate that passion on a local level is slim to none. I mean, yeah, they can run the operations according to a manual that you provide. They can use your logo, your color scheme. It can taste the same coming out of the register, or, out of the sandwich shop. But at the end of the day, they don't have that same passion that you do. It's not going to be the same caliber of business. And you've really got to be selective about who you franchise to, because you don't want to just bring in anybody. They've got to be a right strategic fit for your brand. And it's almost like getting married, because the franchise agreements are so long that you really want to be able to, I think, find someone that you're comfortable working with for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Wow.
Absolutely. So actually, I guess now that we're on the matter, I mean, I kind of almost have to disclose it. So an Aero advertising franchise in the United States costs $24,500 for an exclusive territory. And that does come with training, 4 weeks of training, 2 here in Los Angeles, 2 in your city, however you want to split it up. And ongoing support. We have a weekly owners call. You get access to all of our marketing material, media kits, videos. We send instructors out to help you run your competitions and practices. We have an annual World Sign Spinning Championship in which your top managers and sign spinners come to compete and meet with managers and sign spinners from all over the world. So it's a lot of network support. I think entrepreneurial coaching is a big part of it. My business partner, Mike Kenny, and I are very involved in the week-to-week and day-to-day operations for each of our franchises. And we run the whole thing like a sports league. So we share those numbers across the organization. You can see how many sign spinners were out there last week in Orlando versus Washington, D.C. versus Los Angeles. And I think that sort of support now helps each other out. Our franchisees learn from each other and have a variety of different experiences and backgrounds that they bring to the table. So now you've got this network of entrepreneurs that really sort of, I think, comprises the spirit here at Aero Advertising, the same way that our network of athletes comprises our team of sign spinners. So it's been a really interesting way to grow the brand, I think, globally. Absolutely. You've got to say no. I mean, you've got to be very selective. It's almost like being the bachelor. A lot of people try and get the NBA or NFL to open up a team in their city or to bring a team to their city, but you've got to have the right stadium. You've got to prove you've got enough fans, that you're going to invest in the marketing, and that you fit the culture. And I think that's the most important part. And that's one of the things I would be very cautious of if you're considering franchising, because you do need those initial franchise sales, but at the same time, you don't want to compromise the quality of people that you work with. And it's not that, people are bad people. It's just they might not be the best fit for your organization. And for our company, it's really easy. If you don't want to spin a sign, you're probably not a good fit for us. Like, if you don't like ice cream, you shouldn't go work at Ben and Jerry's. This isn't a good job for you. Yeah, same deal. If you were going to be in the NBA or work for the NBA and you had never shot a basketball and didn't know what an assist or a rebound was, I mean, there's probably something that's a better fit for you. And that's really our philosophy here. And so I think finding the right people involves filtration, and involves screening, and involves getting to know people. So I really like to get to know all of our franchisees in person, and to do that before you make that franchise commitment is essential in my mind, getting to meet them face to face. Absolutely. And that's a great question. So your ideal scenario actually is to turn a company location into a franchise as a franchisor. And what that means is you've got a highly motivated general manager that's been running that business almost like it is their own, showing up early, staying late, they handle the scheduling, they do the cash register, whatever it is. And as this person has grown within the organization and demonstrated, that they can handle more responsibility, some formal business training for them and some assistance on the administrative side can help them form a corporation. And then basically the only thing that changes is the legal entity. You've got the same signage, you've got the same employees, you've got the same location. And so that way, it really is almost like your corporate location continues. And so that's your optimal scenario for transferring. Now, on the other side, when a franchisee isn't doing well, or maybe they have a life change, maybe they get married, maybe they have a kid, and they have less time in their life to run their own business, well, then they might want to exit the business. And so then turning a franchise into a corporate location makes sense then, because
Right,
you don't
right.
want those employees to be without jobs, you don't want those clients to be without service. And so then in that instance, we've got other franchises or perhaps one of our companies that would then, make sure that they're registered to do business in that territory, all of the necessary taxes or insurances are in place, and then transferring the billing and the payroll to our corporation instead of
Mm,
the franchisee's corporation. With each franchise agreement we sign, there's a general release that's included at the end. That way, the language is straightforward. People know that, hey, if there ever comes a time that we need to part ways, this is the contract that we'll sign in order to do so.
right,
And
right.
that enables us to do it in amiable terms. And I think that we've had that in a couple of instances. And it's just like losing a client or losing an employee or breaking up with a girlfriend. It hurts, but you move on. And I think if you can be professional and polite and extend each other some courtesies, then at the end of the day, it's okay. So when you want to value a franchise, you look at the price of the license that doesn't deteriorate because that price, that market value is established by the franchise agreement. If the franchisor has increased their franchise price, then this price could actually appreciate. So then you want to combine that with I think any other valuation model that you would use, perhaps a discounted cash flow model where you're looking at the future streams of revenue, times the likelihood that they occur, discounted for time, and then you can sort of estimate the value of the business there. There might be some fixed assets in place. In our business's case, you look at the signs, the relationships with the employees, the relationships with the clients, and that really all factors in there. So we have helped a couple of our franchisees successfully sell their business. And
What?
I think,
How much could they? Some of those sales have been, if you could share, or just generally, how much could?
right, absolutely. In fact, even some of our corporate locations, when we franchise those, our franchisees bought the existing business. I think one of them went for as much as 160, $200,000. And then, that creates other opportunities because someone doesn't necessarily have all that cash up front. They might finance the price of that asset and then pay interest on it. So we might get some of that in principal, and now we've got streams of royalties coming in for the intellectual property, for the principal component of the loan, and for the interest component of the loan.
Oh wow,
Uh,
I never even thought. So you're
and
like a bank in some ways too.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that's probably my number one job these days is to act as a clearinghouse for the money. A lot of our larger clients, like a Sprint or a McDonald's, prefer to write one check and be able to have the same service in all these different markets. And then it's our
Wow,
job to
interesting.
basically transfer the money to our different franchises so that they can process the payroll for their employees. right, so I just finished reading the Steve Jobs biography and slash autobiography. He's got a lot of his own words in there, but he was fantastic at thinking outside of the box and not taking no for an answer. I think his resolution to bring his visions to life and to aimlessly sometimes pursue his passions have left the world a more creative and more inspired place.
And Richard Branson.
All right, Richard Branson just doesn't follow any rules, and I really like that. So
I'm seeing a pattern here. Don't take no for an answer. Don't follow any rules.
No, I mean, I think that that's an important part of really building yourself up and extending your business globally is you've got to do something that helps you stand out as an entrepreneur. And I remember being in high school when Richard Branson was trying to launch the Virgin Cola brand here in the United States, and he drove a red tank through Times Square. And whether it's Branson's red tank or Steve Jobs' all clear Apple store, they knew that they had to make a splash in Times Square. And so, that's one of the things that inspired me to go sign spinning in Times Square.
Yeah. So what did you do in Times Square, out of curiosity?
I mean, just last week we did a campaign for Honest Tea, the beverage company. They hosted a big recycling event, and they had sign spinners to help direct New Yorkers towards these oversized recycling bins and encourage them to identify these as they travel throughout the city, because now they're going to be present on various street corners. So we help with branding campaigns like that, but I mean, we've done all kinds of stuff in Times Square, including a video that ran for CNBC all summer, I think in 2007, 2008.
Awesome. I love it. And final one, Muhammad Yunus.
So Muhammad Yunus, aside from being a Nobel Peace Prize winner, is a fantastic social entrepreneur. And I think his companies are an example of how you can earn a smaller profit margin, but basically multiply that over a large volume in order to create successful companies. Or the idea that, small profit motivates entrepreneurs that might not necessarily have access to millions of dollars. Right? It's okay to run a small company too and to be a small business owner. And his ability to finance these companies and to provide them with the training and the assistance that they need to empower themselves is, I think, what the spirit of entrepreneurship is all about. And so his work in Bangladesh with the Grameen companies, I think, is just phenomenal. I still have to think as an entrepreneur, and I have to resist the temptation from playing the old game, which was, running an advertising company, and really force myself to think as the CEO of a franchise company. And that means coming up with new ideas on how to structure the franchise agreement, or if there's ways that I can modify the structure of the advertising board, increase their contribution, motivate them to have more conference calls or make suggestions, go out there and do some of the work myself and source different vendors for them. So, I can still do that stuff. It's just, there might be an extra step involved. But at the end of the day, the trade-off for me was, all right, grow a certain speed at the corporate rate with your own money and your own time, or franchise the business and bring some other owners on board and leverage other people's time and other people's money and their connections and their local experiences to build a brand. And we wouldn't be in all the cities and countries that we're in if we didn't franchise, and that creates, residual opportunities. So when you pick a strategy, you pick an offense, that's what you got to do. All right, so we're just gonna go with the office version of the basic flip. There you go. We got a little spin action. But yeah, we definitely like to play with these inside, outside of the office whenever we're bored. I don't want to break anything right now, but
I mean,
yeah,
is there enough room to even take off the earpiece for a second and try it out?
Oh man! All right, here we go. Let's see what you're putting me on the spot here with the mini sign. Let's get the angle here. Oh yeah, there you go. Boom, boom. Oh yeah. And we're back.
Very nice demonstration.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more coaching, and I think coming up with systems that'll work for everybody. You've got to consider people's different levels of experience and their different backgrounds, and say, okay, well, is this something that everyone will be able to do? How much would this cost them? Are they going to be willing to do this on their own? Because if you've got to force your franchisees to do something, it's not going to work. They've really got to see it as benefiting them and adding to their bottom line.
Do you have an example of where you really saw this clearly? Maybe where you tried to force something, you thought you had this great idea and it didn't work?
Well, I would love it if all of my franchisees would use QuickBooks Online, but no, I just think it's a really great way to keep track of your bills and your invoicing, and they've done a great job with their cloud-based platform. So I can't force everybody to do it, but man, I sure would love if they did. But it does cost some money, so.
Okay, so that's interesting because I would have thought that, like, when you think about a franchise or like McDonald's, they're able to say, it seems like, have command over all the systems and say you have to do that. And something like QuickBooks, why can't you just say this is part of it?
I mean, you can. So if you want to revise the operations manual, send it out, tell everybody, hey, this is the new way to do things. You got to do it. But what are you going to do? You're going to go shut them down because they're not using the right accounting system. If they're doing a good job with the business, at the end of the day, you'd rather just motivate them to make the change, because taking somebody to court always costs money. So
right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And that's really one of the things about being a franchisor. Sure, you've got all these ramifications, but they cost a lot more money to enact, to really to execute that strategy, because the game has changed. The consequences are higher stake. Well, I mean, it's not something that I think worries me because of the way we treat our franchisees. I think we have good working relationships with them, open channels of communication. We talk to them if they're having a problem. We really personally will go out there and try and help them overcome that challenge. And then, I'm fortunate enough to have some great legal resources at my disposal, i.e., my mom, who's been an attorney for 30 years. So
is she a franchise attorney?
No, she's not a franchise attorney, but I think that she's definitely encouraged me to do my research, to read through our document, and to be very well prepared for, I think, worst case scenarios. And you want to avoid these if at all possible. But at the end of the day, if a legal situation does arise, you've got to have the right stuff in place. And I think that as a franchisor, you could worry about that, or you could proactively go out there and try and help your franchisees run successful businesses, and that'll probably help you avoid that situation.
Is that the biggest risk at the end of the day with most franchisees? Is that this franchisees suing franchisors? Or is that just what gets the most publicity?
I think that's what gets the most publicity, but at the end of the day, franchisees are responsible for their own success. They've got to go out there and market the business and create these opportunities. And that's regardless of whatever type of business you're running. Corporate's never going to do the sales for you or hand you the clients. If they are, there's an additional fee, I promise, associated with that. Yeah, no, I mean, she does a really good job, I think, separating it, and her advice has been fantastic. And she's very good at presenting different options and allowing me to continue to make decisions, but doing so within the legal frameworks of society. So I think that that's helps with the confidence in terms of the decision making. You want to be able to run something by everyone,
Right,
and
right.
whether it's a parent or not, having someone more senior than you in your support network is extremely important. I mean, one of the top 5 phone numbers you call on a daily basis should be someone with significantly more experience and wisdom than you.
And at the end of the day, like, there's no one else like in the entire world probably than your mom that you want kind of in that role because she's gonna probably think about everything.
Yeah, I mean, she's always got my best interests at stake, and at the end of the day, we've everyone in the company kind of calls her mom because she's been there for all of us, and we ran the business out of her garage for a long time, so it's really just as much her company as it is mine and
Yeah.
everybody else's. Right, right. And to be honest with you, we've kind of done the franchising as we've found the right people, and the right people usually self select themselves. And so we had a group of students from Seoul, Korea reach out to us as part of an entrepreneurship project they were doing. And when they graduated, they wanted to, fulfill that project by bringing the business to Seoul, Korea. And I think that that really set the tone for our international development. And it's been the fruition of sort of my education to expand the business globally because that's what I studied, and I do have a passion for traveling in my free time as well. So it's been one of the reasons that I've found myself still so inspired and motivated to run Aero is the fact that we're expanding in this fashion. But people hear about us in different media outlets and want to bring the opportunity to their city, to their country, and we let the demand dictate the growth.
You mentioned some students brought it to you. Did I ever connect you with Cindy Bush at in Denver? They
No,
have
I
a
don't think
franchise.
so.
Okay, they're creating one of the most pioneering programs in the country around it, where they're purchasing a lot of franchise in the school, and then having the students run it. So I
I love
apologize
it.
for not doing that. That would be I'll do that right now.
Oh, that's really cool.
Uh, Great. So global. So we got a few questions from traveling and global. Evan, what country do you have the biggest presence in besides the U.S.?
Internationally, right now, in first place is Mexico.
Oh, really?
So,
Interesting.
yeah, we look at everything in terms of volume of hours, and they're doing a great job. I think the team in Korea is right behind them, and then Canada is strong for us, Puerto Rico, and then the folks in Croatia and France are, just getting it off the ground. They're less than a year old.
And Javier, do you get to travel a lot? What do you franchise work do on the road? I don't know what that question means, but
So when I do get to travel a lot, I just finished being on the road for 7 weeks. I went
wow,
to 4 different countries, 15 cities. I
wow, that's
visit.
awesome.
I mean, yeah, there's pros and cons. So
I agree.
I visit all of our different franchisees, and I go to the practices and meet the sign spinners. I go on sales appointments with them so that I can meet their clients, get to even audit their filing cabinets and look at their personal organization levels and see what type of business they run. We also get to do things like work out together or go out to dinner. So spending that face time with our different business partners in these cities, who are really my clients these days, is essential. So
Yeah.
that for me is work. It's face time with key people. Again, each time we open a new city, it's really the demand that will dictate that. So part of that is the business partners overseas have to be able to afford to bring that concept there. And although the startup costs are small, they're not non-existent. So those flights, the registration of the intellectual property, and travel and lodging for a couple of our corporate members to come and implement the systems are all included in the startup fees.
Are
So
they higher in abroad?
it depends on where you're going. So
I mean the
yeah.
costs, but I mean are the fees that you charge people to become a franchisee?
No, actually, we have the same price for one city internationally. It's still $24,500 US, and the royalties are actually smaller because
Oh,
we
really?
can't do as much to support you from across the ocean as we can in your home country. So it's only a 5% licensing fee on gross billings the same way, and there is no advertising fund because we really count on you to do a lot of the local advertising on your own.
And
So, yeah, that's a great question, and we have both actually going on, and we're flexible in that fashion, and that's helped us grow quicker. For instance, Australia has what you were referring to as it's a master license, so they become the franchisor in Australia. But part of being the franchisor there is running a successful flagship market. So they pick a flagship market. In this case, theirs is Sydney, and their responsibility is to get Sydney off the ground. The deposit that they provide on the master license covers the franchise fee of that first flagship. When they're ready to become the franchisor, they provide the remainder of the master license fee. When you're the master license, we don't necessarily charge you a royalty based on the percentage of billings. You instead pay a flat amount based on the number of locations that you have open.
ah, fascinating, fascinating.
So that's just our model. There's a lot of different models out there. And even with our model, I think we customize it for different people's scenarios, different countries. Some people might want a master license that extends across a specific region and might include a couple of smaller countries. So we're learning and growing. Not that I've found. Most young people don't really go the franchise route. It's definitely a different industry. I've had some people recommend it to me, and I've definitely had some regrets in terms of traveling down this path. But overall, I think it was the right strategy for us. And you really do have to have your business in a unique place strategically in order for the move to make sense. I guess if you play chess, it's sort of like castling, when you switch your rook and king.
Right. Ooh, that's a good
Every,
analogy.
everything's got to be lined up.
Right, right. And maybe that sets you back a move in chess, but it sets you up for the future.
I think
That's right.
so. Well, I think I definitely would have extended credit to different customers and been a little bit tighter on, collecting on receivables. That's always great in order to improve your cash conversion cycle. At some point, I would have gone with
And
different. Yes,
and
sir.
receivables from customers or from
Yeah, absolutely, from customers.
franchisees.
No, yeah, from customers while we were still in advertising business. And then the same thing's true on franchisees. I think we financed some of the licensing fees internally, and it allowed people to not take the business as seriously as they needed to.
Ah, interesting.
Didn't have as much skin in the game, and they were more willing to walk away from it without trying. And
Interesting.
so that's a learning experience in and of itself. But either way, the more money you can get up front for your service, the easier it is for you to run the business your way and to execute your vision. Otherwise, you have to spend time collecting instead of executing. All right, so the Michael Collins book, I think, really helps entrepreneurs take their company to the next level. Really turn a company and an idea into an organization and a corporation with a lifeline that's not necessarily parallel to that of the entrepreneur. When you can leave a legacy and create something that's bigger than you, that's when you have something that you could price and possibly sell to somebody else, or you could pass down to somebody, hire a CEO for, and walk away and start another business. And going from good to great requires, I think, a commitment to certain business fundamentals that not everybody has. So it's stuff that isn't always fun to do, like the rebounding and the dribbling drills. Everybody wants to go out there and shoot three pointers and dunk, but really good basketball players, even in a pickup game, play defense and rebound.
Next book, E Myth. I think we all know that book.
Yeah, so Michaels are just good authors. I don't know what it is. So Gerber's book, dude, he talks about how a lot of times people think starting your own business is going to set you free, but if you don't have systems in place, it can really make you a slave to the company. And so I think that there's a lot of myths such as that surround entrepreneurship, or that getting a big contract is always a good thing, that sort of are dispelled by this work. All right, so the world is flat is for all my economists out there. It's sort of a classic at this point. But when I read it, it had just come out, and I love Thomas Friedman and all of his posts in the New York Times. So anything he writes, I highly recommend it. But this, I really feel like, is the backbones of our current economic situation. You want to look at the interplay of China, India, the United States, and sort of the role that all of the BRIC countries play with the more developed world. I think that this is really a good manual for that. And so in our vision, international expansion was a big part of that. And that means taking risks in cities and countries that you've never been to before. I just came back from Brazil, and this was my first trip there. And the description I can best offer is that the waves are bigger. And, I love going to the beach, and in California, we've got some great waves. And you can see these economic waves. But in Brazil, the waves are bigger right now. And I would say that about any of the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, that the opportunity and the growth rate there is that we perhaps experienced in the United States in the 90s and the early 2000s, but you just don't feel that same energy here right now. So the world is flat helped me at least identify where some of those macroeconomic trends are coming from, and
Right,
help
right.
understand sort of the tidal movements that are creating those waves in the ocean. Yeah, absolutely. I am worried about the United States. And if I think that we've got a great asset base, and that at any point, we're one decision away from, sort of economic superiority, returning to this country. But for right now, just the policy decisions that we're enacting, and I think the overall work ethic and attitude of the citizens. I mean, we want to blame politicians, we want to blame large corporations, but at the end of the day, when I'm overseas, people wake up earlier, work later, and they're hungrier. They're hungrier because they don't want to sleep on the floor of their apartment next to three generations of family members, or because they want to go to a good university or travel outside of their hometown and they've never had some of these luxuries that we take for granted. And I think I'm fortunate enough to come from an immigrant family. My, folks came here from former Yugoslavia,
I know that.
and that mentality, I think, is what made this country great. Is that the United States was founded on that immigrant work ethic, and to see it still present internationally is refreshing, and it gives you hope. But we've got to do some things to attract those people to our country. And I think that we still have probably the best university and graduate system out there, and that if we can attract top level world talent to our universities and keep them here. Keep them here with opportunities in immigration law that doesn't chase people out if as soon as they graduate. We want to keep the best minds working here in America so that innovation continues to come from our country, and that the best entrepreneurs are here, giving people access to start their own business. I would say that's one of the greatest differences that I've seen, and it's still easier to start a company in the United States than anywhere else I've been. So I think that we do still have some clear advantages in the entrepreneurship industry. Absolutely. I think that, if I had the right concept out there and it was something that I thought, hey, if, I've got the right operating model in place, I want to empower other entrepreneurs to run this business on a local level. It definitely requires a lot of, local relationships and oversight. Then yes, that would be fantastic. If it's something that's more asset based than human resource based, then the idea might be different. If it's an industry that it's easy to attract investors for on a large scale, then you might not necessarily want to go the franchise route. Franchising is really like finding lots of different little investors, because each time someone pays a franchise fee, they really are investing in your brand $25,000 at a time. So I think that spinners have to buy into the vision, otherwise they're really not going to have fun with the job. And the way that I encourage that is leading by example. And I still go to practice for that reason. I still spin shifts for clients for that reason. And every year at the World Sign Spinning Championship, we have a special competition for all of the managers and owners. And we all go out there and bust a move and hopefully nothing else, in order to, I think, entertain the public and spinners, and to let them know that we appreciate their hard work, and that we know how difficult it is, and that we're willing to do the same thing that we ask them to do. So that's the number one way for me, is just be authentic, and I still go practice spinning in the middle of the night and take signs with me on vacation. So if I'm feeling fat, I gotta, instead of hitting the gym, I hit the corner. And you just can't fake that. So find something that you really truly do believe in, and I think the rest falls into place. Absolutely. I think how much psychology is involved with being a sign spinner and being good at sign spinning. It's obviously a lot more than just doing the trick with the sign. You really get into character. And I teach all of our spinners to turn the corner into their stage. and adjusting your routine,
So like they're
adjusting
like
your
a street
tricks.
performer.
Oh, absolutely. But your crowd changes every 30 seconds. So if you've got, an elderly lady in a Cadillac, you're going to do a different set of tricks and a different routine
Ah,
than
interesting.
if you've got somebody in the lowrider with chrome rims. And you've got the same end goal is to, get that smile that I just got out of you. But you've got to do something that works for maybe both parties.
Do you ever do
And
something like a performance where you get people around and you get people to like clap and things like that?
absolutely. Being out there, especially in urban neighborhoods, it's 50% hype, 50% show. And I study when I go to other cities. I look at the street performers and the way that they're able to gather the crowds, whether they're
Wow.
eating a sword or breakdancing or doing graffiti art. I really do admire their ability to command the crowd, to entertain people, and to just go out there and do this. I mean,
So
they don't have a venue. They're just working with what they got. Absolutely. That's our ideal scenario is that our sign spinners get cash tips based on their performance,
ah,
just like you would tip your bartender if he's out there doing tricks with the bottle. And if your waiter came and was spinning the tray of food before he served it to you, you would probably leave him a nicer tip
that's
because he
pretty cool.
affected the quality of your day. And so I think the record for our spinners is one gentleman got a $500 tip. So
Wow, from one person.
yeah, not bad, right? I
That's
think
not
you made
bad.
the right person smile.
What's yeah? Maybe somebody should go like to the Wall Street area. Have what's the biggest amount of money these companies got from a whole crowd?
Oh man, I don't know if we've ever measured that. I know the guys go out there for maybe a couple hours at a time on Halloween. They've got some signs that say trick or treat, and they're referring to their sign spinning tricks, obviously. So, or tips for tricks is another popular one amongst the spinners.
Hmm.
But I don't know if we've got count on the total tip amount in
Yeah.
one day.
Do you have any idea? Like somebody goes out there for a few hours. Like some of the top ones could get $1,000.
Yeah, well, the best thing you can do is attract a potential new client, and then the sales
Oh
commission on
wow.
that is obviously there's no ceiling on that. So any of our sign spinners can instantly turn into accounts executives just by doing a good job out there, and I've seen
Wow.
that happen a couple of different times as well.
Do people get compensated? So let's say a sign spinner does sign someone up. Do they get? Wow.
Absolutely, they work on the same commission scale that all of our other account executives do.
Yeah. Check this out.
Absolutely. In fact, today our practice in Hollywood is being run by a former Marine.
Really?
So
Wow.
really
Jeez.
likes to focus on breaking them down before we build them back up. And
Jeez.
yeah, it involves running and push-ups, team drills like passing the sign back and forth, but then also attention drills. How to smile and change your facial expression and where to stand on the corner. We can cover administrative things like, okay, company memo, policy, uniform, things like that. So the practices are great. And then it's also an opportunity for our spinners to bond with each other. I think that, psychologically, at least for me, and I think for a lot of other people, if you stop playing organized sports sometime between the age of 16 and 25, there's like this hole in your
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
I used to be on a team, I used to have practice. This is what I used to do with my life after school and on the weekends, and why I stayed in shape, and who I hung out with, and what I wore. And to not have that, I'm not sure how healthy that is because, one of our big hiring advantages is that, young people that stop playing sports, I think, are more likely to get involved with gangs or get pregnant or do drugs. And so we give them this outlet, and it's physically challenging. And then socially, it provides them that team that they can bond with. And it also gives them the leadership and the mentorship from having a coach that we call the spin instructor, and someone else that they can open up to. And they're creating an economic opportunity for themselves while they're doing all of the same things that their sport used to.
That's kind of really fascinating. We've talked about the financial parts of a franchise, but there's such a big social component. I think to what you're doing is we were talking before. You have over 2,000 employees. Around the globe. Like normally employ that many people, you'd have to have like $1 billion company, or I don't know, a few $100 million company at least. So I think that's really fascinating. And now that I understand what people do with practices, and you're out there performing for a crowd, that gives you incredible skills and confidence that I imagine you're part of a team, you're learning how to put yourself out there, attract a crowd. Those kind of skills are transferable.
I think so. Absolutely. One of the things I found the most helpful was the franchise trade shows. I think IFA is the name of the group that puts it on,
Yeah.
the International Franchise Association. And the best shows I've been to are the ones in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. for the global opportunities. And there's some consulting companies out there, a couple that I recommend. One called the Franchise Consulting Group, and another one called the iFranchise Group. And they've got a team of trained professionals over there that you might be able to speak with about, perhaps becoming a franchise pro bono. And then if you do want to retain their services, they're already available. But anyone that owns an existing franchise has a certain amount of knowledge. So if you can find a franchisee of one of these major organizations, a McDonald's franchise or Domino's or 7-Eleven, something like that, that's a good person to talk to. And they're more accessible. They're literally in every street corner. All right, if you've got a vision out there, whether it's to franchise your business or to grow it in another method, never quit. I think if you make a decision, you got to stick to it. And if you've got a dream and a passion, no matter what it takes, save up the money to execute your vision, because you're better off failing than never having tried at all.